good morning, good morning to the Build Your Best Life family. Today, we have a great conversation ahead. I am Deric Durden, your host for today's conversation with the guys. I have three very prestigious men alongside of me today who's going to basically lead the conversation. I'm just going to guide us through this conversation, but the conversation is in itself is a conversation that needs to be had. A lot of people, both young and old, parents and children, need to hear about this conversation. And before we dive right into the conversation, I'm going to allow these young individuals to introduce themselves. If you would, Deacon Dan, please introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Dan Smith. I am the husband of the lovely Coach Deborah Smith. We have four kids, three boys, one girl, and seven grands. I'm currently a retired law enforcement officer after 40 years of service, and I'm still doing some work of my own. I have a lawn service and a handyman service. I'm the chairman of my deacon board, and I just love doing things, and I just love being on this broadcast with the fellows.
Great introduction. And next, we have none other than Coach Dr. Wilbon himself. If you would introduce yourself, please, sir.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? I'm glad to be here. My name is Coach Dr. Kevin Wilbon. I'm an athletic coach. I'm also a 24-year Army veteran. I'm an author of 5 books. I'm an educator and also a motivational speaker. Um, I'm married to the lovely Chris Wilbon. We have 2 children together. But I have 3 kids. And 19, 29, 39. Uh, I'm just here because I like to mix it up with these guys to talk about life for, these young men to see what we can do to help them out. And I'm just glad that they have me here on this show. I want to say thanks to Deborah Smith for, having me on. I've been on for a few, years now, and I'm just ready to dive into it, and I appreciate all these guys that I'm with because they're really going to kick the knowledge to you and everything, and they got that experience, so I'm ready to get.
Thank you for that. I definitely appreciate your presence and every other man who graces the stage of Build Your Best Life conversation with the guys. And so, just moving along, before we go any further, we have to allow Dr. Joseph Levette to introduce himself. Please introduce yourself, Doctor.
Yeah, first of all, great morning to everyone. Man, listen, um, I'm Joseph Levette. First of all, I'm Joseph Levette. Married to the lovely Tony Levette. We have 4 children. We have 11 grandchildren. Yes, Lord. But we love every one of them. Um, I'm 32-year retired Army veteran. Also chaplain by profession, as well as now pastor of a church. So as Coach Wilbon said, I want to thank and appreciate Coach Deborah Smith for allowing me to be part of this platform. I have been also on here a couple of years. We all have. And I always look forward to and enjoy our conversation. And I believe that God has graced us to be able to share with particularly single mothers that's raising young men, so that it can give them some extra tools and resources to help them out as they're going along in this journey of raising their sons. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and let's get in it, brothers.
For sure. Let's dive right in. And I'm pretty sure everybody that's watching is wondering what is this topic that is so important? And the topic is handling disagreement. It doesn't matter what type of relationship it may be at work, it might be at home, it might be with the kids. Everybody has to handle disagreement. The question is, how are we going to handle it? Are we going to handle it healthy, or are we going to handle it toxic? And so let's dive right into the first question. Since we're helping single mothers raise these young men, Dr. Levette, what are some of the mistakes that single mothers make that can be avoided when raising these young men and we're talking about handling disagreement?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes mothers will make, particularly when it comes to boys, is I think sometimes they shield them too much. They love them too much. They kind of try to sort of like try to raise them, you know, not as a man, but they're So I think that's a mistake because as a boy growing into a man, you need some manly advice. You need manly guidance. So I think sometimes they take on the weight of trying to raise a man to be a man, and I think that often becomes a problem. Um, and then sometimes mothers don't let their sons, they don't let them let them make a few mistakes so that they can learn. Because when you make mistakes, it builds strength. It builds help you build your character. So sometimes they shield them from making mistakes, and mistakes will help them along the way. Some people always think mistakes is always a bad thing, but sometimes when you little, you learning how to ride a bike. Or you're learning how to play baseball. You're gonna make some mistakes and all of that. But what you do is you let them make them mistakes and let them get up and be able to ride on the next ride, be able to hit the ball on the next swing. So that's what I think. I think sometimes they shield them too much and not allow them to grow up as men, and they don't allow sometimes male mentors to come in and help them, to show them what it's about to be a man.
For sure, that's a great perspective. You touched two different topics that are definitely prevalent in today's time when single mothers are raising sons. But not to go too much deeper, Coach Wilbon, what is your response to the question? Is some of the mistakes that single moms make when raising young men, and how can they avoid it?
I think, one of the things are, they do a whole lot of things for them. They don't let them man up or young man up to do the things that they need to do. A lot of times they don't teach them the basic life skills that they should be teaching them in the whole 9 yards. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples, like cleaning up, making up their beds, doing the laundry and stuff like that. A lot of times, moms do that for them because, either, dad is not there or whatever. And they may be a single mom. And even with, the father in the house, a lot of times, they just miss that step, excuse me, into teaching them those basic life skills. And then, later on down the road, that cripples them, because they become lazy. They don't want to do anything. Their houses or wherever they're staying is just messed up. Their dorm rooms, if they're in college, and the whole 9 yards. So little things like that, does affect a young man when they don't have that type of, skill, those basic skills and stuff like that. And another thing is that when it comes to doing those type of things, I think that it's very prevalent that they have some kind of a positive male role model in their life. And a lot of times, the mother does not allow that, maybe, because they've been going through some problems with, the kid's dad or whatever, and they don't let them, see them or whatever. Or then you got these positive male role models that want to help out. And, the mom shields their sons, from that type of activity. So those are the two type things that I think that would affect them when it comes to, having the kids, do whatever they need to do to grow up and become a good young man.
Yeah. And the crazy part about it is you reiterated some of the same things that Dr. Levette said. So that just shows one thing that I learned, that when things are repeated, it's for a reason. It really draws my attention to it. So um, definitely not coloring these young men and allowing them to make mistakes, and um, you know put them around the right men. Those are very important. Deacon Dan, what's your perspective on this one? What are some of the mistakes they make, and how can they be avoided?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes is, mothers try to protect their sons from every hardship instead of preparing them for adulthood. I mean, love is great. love to provide support, and it should also teach responsibility. But you got, some mothers unintentionally rescue their sons from consequences of poor decisions and make excuses for, irresponsible behavior. I could continue to do things for them that they should learn to do themselves. I mean, a lot of times I hear, well, you shouldn't have did this, but this is how you should have done it. And, they go right in there, instead of them, you handled it, they go and take over and handle it for the child. But young men grow through responsibilities. They should learn to work to solve problems, manage money, apologize to when they're wrong, or comment. Commitment builds confidence in characters. Now, I think one of the mothers can avoid, one of the things is, speaking life, purpose, and accountability over their sons. These some of the mistakes are allowing natural consequences to become valuable life lessons. But I think in the mean, ballpark it all, the goal is not simply to raise a man, raise a good son, but it's to raise a good man.
For sure. And I want the single moms that's listening, this is not a attack on you. There are a lot of great single moms out there that's doing a great job raising these young men to be productive and successful young men. But we also want to shine a little light on some of the blind spots that mothers sometimes miss. That perspective. I know a lot of times we say that a woman can't raise a young man to be a man, and that's one of those gray areas because there are some women that's doing it on their own and really doing it. But at the same time, there are certain aspects, certain characteristics that a young man gets directly from a man to really develop him into being the man that he needs to be. And so let's take the spotlight off the woman and let's go to the young man. What are some of the qualities that these young men need to grasp? These perspectives, these thoughts that these young men need to grasp in their teens and twenties that will prepare them for the rest of their life. If you would, Coach Wilbon, go ahead and start us off.
Okay. I think that they should focus on developing, like I said before, habits around, self-discipline, like Deacon Dan said, financial literacy and, and have proactive relationship building. I think that, when they tend to do these type things, it tends to help them navigate their way through life and become successful, because I feel like, in order to, build a successful, business, especially in their 20s, their teens, I'm not in their teens, but in their 20s, they want to develop, a great business. These are the type life skills that they must have. In order to have those, they have to have a lot of positive people around them. They have to have, positive role models. They have to have, people that will help them benefit in the long run. And what I mean by that, you have people out here that will take you to the side and will teach you and show you the different things of becoming a young man and becoming a man to make sure that you are successful when you do those type of things. And, and I would say, have a great mentor, of course, first of all things, God, go to church, have someone in church talk to you or whatever. But my main thing is for this one, they need someone in their life to help them with these basic life skills so they can move on and become a successful business person and become a successful young man.
Great response. I think that you touched some topics that you shed some light. Some of the things that we really, well, first and foremost, I know that all the men on this podcast right now are men of God. That has to be the foundation, especially in today's time when there's so many different distractions. Deacon Dan, what are some of the qualities, characteristics, perspective, mindsets that do these young men need to get in their teens and 20s that'll set them up to be successful for the rest of their life?
Well, success comes from talent, talent alone. It builds through daily habits. What they should do, a young man should he learn to develop to keep his promises. Uh, Setting, he set written goals, and learning communication and leadership skills. So there's several things good, but good habits create opportunities long before success become visible. They also can, something everybody always talking about reading. Reading every day can expand knowledge. So if they read daily, they can expand their knowledge. And in investing, managing money wisely by saving and budgeting, and investing. So these are some of the things that they need to learn and be developed, be taught. Also, I think one of the biggest things is choosing friends who challenges him to improve himself. Even like we always been saying, seek a mentor instead of trying to learn everything alone. I'm gonna get it. I do it myself. Come out of that. Let's seek somebody that done had the experience, and that way you can avoid some of the mistakes that's being done. But one of the things I say is I think you got to develop self-discipline before chasing success.
Yes, sir. Self-discipline is one of the main things that will determine if you're successful or not. How can you control your emotions? How can you control your finances? How can you control all the aspects of yourself really will determine how successful you will be. Dr. Levette, what are the qualities, mindsets, things that these young men need to pick up in their teens and 20s in order to set them up to be successful for the rest of their lives?
Well, to go along with what my brothers have already said, one of the things I definitely would say is that they have to know that being dependable is a great character, a great commodity to have. Being dependable, can I depend on you? Are you on time when you need to be somewhere? If you start out working a job, are you on time for your job? Do you do good on your job? Do you work good on your job? Because a lot of times, and I can just say from my own experience in life, sometimes being dependable, when it was really put on me to be dependable, sometimes I found out how dependable I was, because sometimes we drag a little bit. But the good thing is when we are young man, if we be dependable, that already start showing people that they can count on you. And when people can show you that they can count on you, that also makes you feel good, because they'll come to you and say, hey, can you work an extra shift and make a little extra money? Because, I know you're accountable, you're dependable. And I know if you tell me you're going to be here, you're going to be here. So that's one thing I would say. Another thing, and Deacon Dan kind of touched on it, is one thing I always tell young men is always choose your friends wisely. You got to choose a good friends, because one thing I've discovered in life is that your circle will determine your ceiling. Your circle can determine your ceiling. So you got to make sure you're choosing the right people. In other words, pick people that's going to encourage you, people that's going to push you and drive you. You say, hey man, no, you got to keep going, man. You ain't keep going. Don't pull out now. You just got a little bit more time, a couple more years, you will be out of it. But go ahead and keep pushing through. So that's why you got to choose a good circle to have around you. And then the last thing I'll say is don't look for quick success in life. Sometimes waiting and things that may take a little longer would give you better later gratification. Because sometimes guys want to look for the quick success, You know, everybody, you know, we coming up, everybody wanted to be a rapper. Everybody wanted to be a rapper. Well, everybody ain't gonna be a rapper. So you may need to have other things you're working toward, like a college degree, something that you can work on, that you can build on, and then that's something that will last. Because if you build on it over time, it's something usually that will last because you don't went through all of the heartaches and everything that it took to get you there. And so that would probably be my couple things.
Yes, sir. And those couple things were very impactful. Um, Also, I just wanted to add one of the things that we really don't talk about much is communication. And so this goes back to the topic about disagreement. Disagreement is all like your level of communication will help you be better at handling disagreements or make you worse at handling disagreements. So I want to ask you guys, we go into the topic disagreements. What is it or what tools or what things can be done to improve the connection when these young men are handling disagreements? Because we live in a time where these young men are, they're quick to anger, quick to like really fight, shoot, whatever it is that they feel like can get the job done quickly. But what can we pour into them about handling disagreements better? Deacon Dan, can you take that one?
Yeah, disagreement. I look at disagreement as part of life, and maturity is measured by how you respond when someone disagrees with you. And young men should be taught this: always listen before speaking. Because if you're not listening, you're gonna miss something. I be talking to this young man. He started when he cut me off, or he said something. You should be listening. And I have a tendency. Sometimes I have a tendency where I'm a duck. My wife be saying something, and I don't let her finish her statement. So I lost some of the contents. That's why you should listen before speaking. And also, you need to learn how to control your emotions before speaking. I learned this, and in law enforcement, you used to have a lot of people that a guy will come up, young, especially young guys. They come up using insanity, uh, talking loud or whatever. So I immediately tell them, wait a minute, let me ask you a question. Have I cursed you? No, sir. Am I talking loud to you? No, sir. Well, why are you talking loud to me? Right there in that moment of the situation, he don't listen to what I'm saying and he apologized. Well, I apologize. I'm sorry I did that. So always, control your emotions before responding to a question. You need to also respect people. Even when, you have different opinion, you still got to respect their opinion and yours. And then I guess one other things, ask questions rather than making assumptions. So if you're not sure about something, just re-ask the question instead of make the assumption. And I think that'll take you a long ways. One of the biggest things, I think, apologies when you're wrong. A lot of people don't like to apologize when they're wrong. So you got to apologize when you're wrong. And strength is demonstrated through self-control, not intimidation. That's my take on that.
Yes, sir. The one that stuck out to me the most was ask questions. Because a lot of times, if we ask questions to get more clarity, then we wouldn't have a disagreement in the end anyway. So I really think that one that stuck out to me was ask questions. Coach Wilbon, what do you have for us when it comes to helping these young men deal with disagreement?
Yeah, dealing with disagreements, that goes. That's a tough topic, but I feel that dealing with thousands of young men and women in sports and stuff, because I've been doing this forever. I laugh at a lot of that stuff that they be fussing about, because when they have disagreements, a lot of times it's over nothing. And my thing is, a lot of times when they're fussing in the whole 9 yards, it's always about trying to win the argument instead of trying to figure out exactly what you're arguing about. And my thing is with that, you know, before you even get into a disagreement or anything like that, have your facts straight. A lot of times they don't even have their facts straight when they're, disagreeing about stuff. And I just feel like a lot of times when they're arguing and fussing, they're fussing about something just to try to win, the argument. And that's one thing that leads into confrontation, a whole lot of confrontations in the whole 9 yards. And I just feel like, a lot of times it's psychological. I think that it takes communication and communication techniques, and also knowing about yourself and how you feel when it's time, when you get into a argument. A lot of times you'll have those triggers that, your heart start racing, or, you get a headache, or, you get ready, to yell or scream. I think step back. They got this thing called a 3-second rule, where, you just step back and say, hold on for a second. A lot of times people talk about I'm a woosah and all of that type of stuff. Well, I feel like before you feel like you're getting ready to jump, you're getting ready to get froggy and jump, you step back. And a lot of the young kids, they don't do that. They just keep fussing and fussing. The next thing you know, they start throwing elbows, they start throwing fists and stuff like that. So you got to know your body. You got to, know your brain. You got to know the psychological things that's going to happen. And what's going to trigger you, your temper, and the whole 9 yards. But stop trying to win a disagreement, because it's not about winning a disagreement. It's about coming to some kind of common ground to try to figure out, what's right and what's wrong. Because everybody's going to have a difference of opinion, no matter what you feel. And then even at the end of the argument, it still is not going to solve anything. You're going to feel one way and the other person's going to feel another. But it's all about self-control. All about self-control.
I think that is that stop trying to win a disagreement. I think people of all ages can take that note and apply it to their life. Because at the end of the day, if there's a disagreement and you win, you still don't win, because it comes at the cost of the relationship. So is being right or building a relationship more important? That's the real question. And so I love that perspective when you say don't try to win the disagreement. Dr. Levette, what's your perspective on how can these young men handle disagreement in a healthy way, a productive way, instead of a detrimental way? And like Coach Wilbur said, not trying to win, but just get to a common ground.
Yeah, I love this question. Deacon Dan took about half of my answers, but probably more than half. But in a sense, but what I will say is, disagreements is a shared responsibility between parent and son. It's a shared responsibility. What I mean by that is that whenever there's a disagreement, you know, we have to understand that disagreement, when our children have a disagreement with us, it's not it's not a disrespect because they have a disagreement. And we got to be, comfortable enough to allow them, if they disagree, to express that they disagree, and then don't like demoralize whatever they're saying because they might have a different viewpoint on something than you do. So don't demean them and don't demean their character. Just try to understand what their disagreement is. And don't always try to explain it away like their disagreement was wrong. But take in what they said and let them know, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. Here is my point on that. And then sometime, from even though they may disagree with you initially, once you explain your point and the fact that you listen to them explain their point, they may say, okay, you might be right, Mom. You might be right, Dad. You know, Yeah, you might be right. Now that I think about that, the way you put that, probably that made me think a little better. So sometimes if you allow them to be part of the disagreement, rather than it just be a one-sided, it's going to be this way. I disagree, and this is the way it's going to be. Then the other thing I say, as adults, we got to be the example, and we got to model that particular thing. Kids watch how we resolve conflict, how we resolve disagreements with our spouses or with anyone, with other people. They watch how we do it. If they see us yelling all the time, they see us yelling, cursing, and doing all of them things, then that's what they're gonna be prone to do because that's what they see. So we gotta model and be the example, so that way that they know that every disagreement that we have, it's not a time to have a yelling match, a screaming match, you know. But yeah, they'll repeat what they see. So if we be a good example and we model how to handle disagreements, a lot of times then they'll take on those same characteristics.
Yes, sir. Because at the end of the day, disagreements are unavoidable. The question is, how are we going to handle it? And the best way to handle it is to do exactly what all three of you guys said. Try to get to a common ground, something healthy where everybody feels understood, feels heard, and really just move from there. Because again, like I say, if you do win, it comes at the cost of the relationship. And so let's dive into a different aspect of disagreements. How can parents be an example of how to deal with disagreements in the home? Because a lot of times the parents and the children don't agree on certain things. So how can that? Because we know our parents are some of the first teachers that show us how to handle certain things. What can some of our parents, the single moms, the fathers, do when they get in conflict with their child? How can they be that example of handle disagreements? If you would, Dick and Dan, would you start us off?
Well, I think when you get in conflict with your child, it's it's do or don't. And what I mean by that, you need to explain your disagreement. You need to explain how to handle this disagreement. Sit down and talk with them. Keep your tone of voice level. You don't have to yell. Uh, I think that be more suitable than yelling, because you can talk to your child, and as long as you're cool, you're level, you're not yelling or raising your voice, he'll come to focus on you. He'll come to listen. Okay, this is what mom's saying. This is what dad's saying, and let him learn through that way. Because you don't want to be intimidating to him. Because you're intimidating him, they're going to put fear in him. So he's not going to accept that. Whereas you come to him in a calm way, non-intimidating way, a way that he could be, understanding what you're saying and how you focus on what direction you want him to go. And that way he can learn more, and he can take this on with him for life.
Yes, sir. I think that's important because what we don't realize is that our children pick up a lot of stuff from us that we don't even tell them, but they see. They pick up our ways we handle disagreements. They pick up our ways that we communicate with other people in our lives. And so, the, Coach Wilburn, how can we be the example to our children when we're talking about handling disagreement?
Okay. A lot of times when you disagreement, it's always in the middle of the disagreement, it always end up being, yelling, screaming, fussing, the whole 9 yards. I would say that, in order to handle this, you just press a reset button and for all parties involved, not just the kid, but the mom and the dad or who's ever, in the argument. Find out, what the disagreement is all about. Make sure you hear everything. 'Cause a lot of times people, jump the gun and they don't hear everything that has been said to them, and then they mistake what they hear for something that they didn't hear, and that causes a lot of arguments as well. And I feel like, when you're talking to young men, you sit down and you talk to them, in a good tone. Uh, Try not to yell, like Deacon Dan said. Try not to get upset. And once you see that your son, is getting upset, or your daughter is getting upset, stop, press, reset, ask, what is it that I said to make you feel this way? Or why are you feeling this way? Did I hear you right? Did you hear me right? Reiterate what you are discussing to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. And I feel like if you do that a lot of times, then you tend to find out that some things were misinterpreted, that was not, accurately, came out or accurately heard right. A lot of times you'll get to the root of the problem, and then you'll end up being, and both of you or everybody will end up being in a safe place, in a good space. So I think that's one of the things that, as mentors, as mothers, as fathers, we need to sit back and do that. And the reason why I say this, because I was one of the ones back in the day, even when I was coming up, yelling, screaming, fussing, hollering, and I felt at the time, there wasn't even really no need to do all of that. I had to sit back and, like I said, press, reset, and listen, and to find out what the problem was. And then we end up having a great conversation. So a lot of times, all those disagreements that I had with kids or my own kids, even with my wife, I find out that a lot of times, we jump the gun and we do not listen to what has been said. So I think that's one of the major things that we can do to try to improve the disagreements, in your house or in your family, or whoever you're dealing with. Make sure you're hearing right, sit back, ask questions, make sure, you understand exactly what they're talking about. You'll get to the root of the problem and everything will be okay.
Dr. Levette, it's amazing to hear these two young men explain, listen to your kids, and how those conversations. Because I know me, and I know if I did, I know each and every one of y'all grew up in the area and do as I say, not as I do. So, so to hear these men talk about, just taking time, because we didn't have a voice. Whatever we was told to do, we did. We didn't get a chance to have a voice or have an opinion. And so in today's time, it's just amazing how the perspective, the viewpoint of everybody has changed, and really to understand that kids are human beings too. Children have feelings, have thoughts. So to you, Dr. Levette, what's your perspective on how can parents be the example in handling disagreements in everyday life?
Well, I'm gonna say the first thing to go along with what my brothers already said. They did a tremendous job of explaining it, but I would even add to what they said by saying that whenever too we sit down to have a discussion about a disagreement with our child, let's remove all distractions. That all cell phones, no cell phones, turn the TV off, anything that can become a distraction to the conversation. Remove them elements, because what happens is when you sit down and you start having a talk, nowadays sometimes we'll find ourselves going in our phone, checking a text or checking a this or that, or phone call, phone ring, and you want to at least see who it is. Just remove every distraction, because one of the greatest, I think one of the greatest um, resources, one of the greatest tools is the fact that we show that we fully listening. You got my total undivided attention, so that there's no distractions. That way I won't miss what you were saying. I won't misconstrue what you're saying. I'll hear you clearly. I won't take it out of context. And then you will know. So that way when we have the conversation, we are hearing each other. Now, that don't just go for the parent, that go for the child as well. Make them leave their phone in their room somewhere where they can't get to it. Anything that would distract them as well. So we can have a straight up, eye to eye, straight conversation where we know we are listening to each other and we're paying attention. Another good example is when you're talking to your kid, don't be looking all around everywhere. Give them that eye to eye contact, because sometimes they know you're being as truthful and you're being as serious as you can be when you give them eye to eye contact. It's just like when you learned many years ago, you went on the job interview. They always like one of the main things they said when you answer the questions, always look them in the eye, because that let them know that you confident and you serious about what you're talking about. So that would be my first thing. Give them your undivided attention. The next thing, the example you got to set is don't play the blame game. The blame game is not going to get you nowhere. It's just going to intensify and take the whole discussion in a different direction. Don't worry. Don't try to blame. It's not about blaming who was right or who's wrong. It's about hearing each other out. And then now let's come to a common understanding. Let's come to a compromise so that we can be able to move forward. Don't always mean that they're going to accept our disagreement. And it don't mean that they're going to accept that we're going to accept theirs. But what it will mean is that we come to a good place where we got a pretty good resolve and that we can move forward, and this probably won't be an issue again. So that would be my two takes on this particular question. Great question, Deric. That was a great question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. But let me say this. You said take the cell phones away. Now I don't know if you're trying to handle agreement in a healthy way or start a disagreement. Because if you take a kid's cell phone, you might start a disagreement. So definitely, but you did give some great pointers. It was technical. You know, a lot of time we look at the soft skills, but that was very technical. Eye contact, you know, just putting all away the distractions. Hey, this shows you, this shows our child that they mean that much to us. That we could just set that time aside specifically for them in order to show them or grow them or whatever it is that we're pouring into them. And so we're actually getting close to the end. And before I end, I want everybody to give a summary, give a powerful statement to really just put that punch to it to end on a high note. If you would, Deacon Dan, start us off with that. And so we can just get to this close and really close it out. But we want to end just as strong as we started.
Well, to every mother, raise the man your son is becoming, not just the boy he is today. Another thing, teach character before comfort. Teach him responsibility before rewards. Teach him integrity before popularity. But the main thing is pray with him consistently. Love him unconditionally and prepare him intentionally. Because one day, the value you teach at home will become the legacy that he carries into his own family. So I'm going to leave with that right there.
No, you're not, Deacon Dan. You ain't going to get off of there without saying something about Coach Deborah Smith and her book. No, you're not.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I'm not going to say it. Yeah, but this program is a great program. Coach Deborah D. Smith. I want to grab her book. I didn't put it on the desk. Build Your Best Life. Give me 1 second. You got it? Somebody got it in their hand? I grab it. This book has a lot of points, comments. If buy for your son, let him read it. Not only that, you read it, because it is a great book. It helps a lot of our young men to become a man. So my hat's off to Deborah, which she did a great job with this book. And we're going to continue. I thank her for getting this panel together, men discussing, because you got, I don't know, a lot of knowledge sitting here. These young men that we have here today, we've been through a lot of different things, and we want to share it with what we don't want you all to go through, but we want you all to make your life better so you can build a best life.
Yes, sir. That's how you close out right there. I look. Y'all know you my pops, but I'm gonna get the bad end of the stick if I let you go out here like that. So I definitely have to say something. Coach Wilbon, go ahead and give us your impactful statement, closing. Go ahead and just knock it out the park for us.
I'm gonna try to knock it out the park the best way I can. I would say to anyone that's listening to this, especially the young men, and I'm hoping a lot of young men are listening to this podcast because it's a powerful podcast that Coach Deborah Smith had put together, and I want to thank her for that as well. I would say accept 100% ownership of everything in your life and completely erase the word blame. Stop blaming people for a lot of things that's going on in the whole nine, y'all. Like I said, accept responsibility and deserve what you deserve. If you know you're wrong, accept being wrong. Accept the consequences of being wrong. But just make sure that you listen, okay? Because the moment you start blaming your parents and everything, for circumstances, situation, you give away all the power that you have. Be a man, accept responsibility and consequences. And that's what I'm going to say about that. And I got one last thing that I want to say, and I hope Coach Deborah Smith won't be upset with me about this, but I want to congratulate my son. I really do, because it's very important. He's a sophomore at Columbia University, and he just got proclamated by Charles County, Maryland, as the most decorated athlete in Charles County history. His name is Christian Wilbon, and I told him I would shout this out. It's very important to me, because as a young Black man, him doing this is something significant and historical. And I want everybody who's watching this to know that this boy put in a lot of hard work. He deserved, all the praise, and all praise to God that this happened for him.
Yes, sir. I don't think Coach Deborah would be mad, because what it actually does is you're on here talking about being a mentor, being a coach. If we don't do it right in our own home, how can we do it right for other people? And so for you raising that young man to be the young man that he is, I do not have one shadow of a doubt that Coach Deborah has any negative viewpoint about you sharing that. For sure. Joseph, Dr. Levette, Pastor, go on and hit us with that heat, that fire to close us out, if you would.
Hey, I don't know if I can top those guys. They gave some awesome answers.
Sure you
I'll just add my little piece to the puzzle. But I would say, first of all, start with responsibility, teaching responsibility. The responsibility for a child always starts in the home. And if you start that responsibility in the home, you teach them how to do things. And you don't have to be a man to teach a boy responsibility. Because when teaching them responsibility, and I want every single mother to hear me. As a single mother, you can still teach him responsibility. Teach him how to give him chores, how to take out the trash, and how to carry a heavy tote up the stairs, something you need to do. Give them kind of the more little manly little tool chores that they can do around the house. Because if you start teaching them responsibility, then as they get older and they get a mentor to teach them how to be a man, now they already kind of ready, because you set a good stage on teaching them responsibility. Then the next thing I would say is teach them respect. To let them know respect definitely goes both ways. We say that often, but they really have to understand what that means. Respect always go both ways. And I'm going to tell you, respect even come down to what's the example you're setting. If you're a mother, your son is watching how you allowing people to treat you and respect you, particularly other men. They're watching how they see they respect you. So don't let nobody disrespect you. And so your son can see that. You know, you correct that on the spot because your son need to see first that you're being respected. And when he see that you're being respected, then it teaches him respect. And then the last thing I want to say is pay very close attention to your child's emotional health. Emotional health is always so important. You know, you got to let them know that as a boy, yeah, it's okay to cry. Something really touch your heart and make and hurt your heart. It's okay to cry. Let them be able to express their emotions to you. Let them be able to count on you that when they come and they express their emotions to you, you ain't gonna degrade them and say, man, you acting like a little punk, whatever. But let them be able to express themselves to you and be able to love on them when that happens. Because at the end of the day, one of the greatest uh, attributes a mother has is love, nurturing, and guidance. They can still do that without it being a man in the home. But they got to show that love and allow them because most men, most boys growing up, and I can say this, and I believe the other fellas agree, growing up most of the time, whenever it was a time I expressed my emotions, I go to my mom. I didn't really go to my dad to express emotion because my dad gonna be like, suck it up and drive on.
Yep. Yep.
Take that hit, take one for the team and keep moving. But mom is gonna sit there and nurture me through it and say, it's okay to feel the way you feel. I understand. So that's why, and I want mothers to know that's how important you are. You are that important that you can be, you still can be a very valuable asset to a young man growing up. And then lastly, I just want to say again, thank you, Coach Deborah Smith. Thank you for allowing me as well as all of us being on this platform to share what knowledge and wisdom that we've gained over the years of our life. And if you don't mind, everyone that's watching this, get the book, Build Your Best Life. Build Your Best Life. You can also go to www.buildyourbestlife, and you can still enjoy this book. It's a whole lot of golden nuggets in it. So that would be my take on it. I hope I didn't take too long.
That was good.
Yeah, because I don't got nothing else left to say. So, we can just go ahead and end it off today. You know what I'm talking about? So he said that he if he could come behind y'all, he did that and took my job. So I want to say thank you for making it easy for me. So for sure, this has been another great conversation with the guys. Shout out to Coach Deborah Smith, as Dr. Levette just took my job doing. Make sure you get the book. And thank you to each and every one of you guys, because y'all all bring a different perspective from a different background and different views and bring different nuggets that each individual who watching can take with them. So with that, this has been another great conversation with the guys. Turn in next month, same time, same channel, but different conversation. I thank each and every viewer for giving us your time, your ear, your attention. And so with that, look forward to seeing you next month. This has been another conversation with the guys.